Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 3 Pound Developer Stream. My name is Mike Johnson. I'm the community manager for 3 Pound Games, and this stream and the next two. So for the next 3 Thursdays, counting today, we will be doing a 3-part Blender tutorial starring our very own Bryce Evans, who I need to unmute now. There we go. Bryce, you should be able to speak. Bryce, how are you doing?
Hello. Good. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful, and I'm super excited to learn something I know absolutely nothing about. Also with me to play the part of pupil are Cordelia and Alyssa. How are you two doing today?
Hello.
So what you're looking at now is Bryce's screen, and he will swap between, because Cordelia and Alyssa are also sharing their screen, so he will swap between them as well to do the instructional piece. So this, again, will be broken up into 3 parts. I'll let Bryce go through what each week will cover. And Bryce, take it away. I'm going to turn my camera off. It's all yours. Floor is yours, sir.
All right. Hello, everyone. Oh, Brady, him, yeah. I also love 3D modeling sometimes. So we have Blender here before us, as Mike said, for the next few streams, the next 3. So this one and then the next 2. We're going to cover kind of the basics of each little aspect of the 3D modeling pipeline for Blender. So modeling, viewport navigation, materials, shader graph stuff, animation, rigging, UVs, kind of a little bit of everything, because a lot of the tools in Blender are super easy to use and implement and mess around with. So that's kind of our goal, is not like a textbook comprehensive every single thing about Blender, but more of like how to get something modeled, rigged, and animated as seamlessly as possible, especially because Cordelia and Alyssa are coming from Maya, so you already know what beveling is, so we don't have to go into what it is, just how to do it in a different program. So this is basics of Blender, but also kind of basics of Blender for people who kind of already know how to do this stuff in a different program. So I'll try and keep it simple, but also not like too simple. So to start off with, let me pull up y'all's screens. Okay, cool. I can see you. There we go. Trying to get like the grid view so I can see everybody.
You get to see my ultra wide
Yeah, it's
Blender.
love it.
If you're window sharing, Bryce, you'll need to switch it to like a screen share so we can see what you're seeing. Because right now, we're just.
I just mean I'm pulling it up on my other monitor so that I can see,
okay,
like,
gotcha.
in the distance. If there's an issue that comes up, then I'll swap screens so that everyone can see what we're troubleshooting or something.
Hey, Mechanized Magic, how you doing? Welcome in.
Hello.
So when you first open Blender, usually you'll have a splash page that'll greet you. You can just literally click anywhere and it'll go away, and leave us with our beautiful default viewport. Someone made a joke. It's like a huge landscape of just cubes, and it's every time someone opens Blender, they always delete like all the default stuff, and so there's just the land of deleted default cubes sitting around. So you start with a camera and a cube and a light. I usually get rid of all this stuff right away, but we'll leave it here for now, just because it gives us something to manipulate. So first things first is actually navigating in the viewport. So to orbit, I guess that would be the camera, middle mouse button, simple as that. Or tumble. I don't know camera terms very well, I apologize.
That's good enough for me.
How dare you?
Yeah, it works.
Right.
Hey, Steve.
Steve.
Hello, the least famous Steve. You could be the most famous Steve to us.
Yeah. The most to me.
I'm tumbling.
We're tumbling. So then panning is shift middle mouse.
Whoa.
That's an odd
Okay.
one.
Yeah, that is weird. I'm gonna have to write that one down because I might forget.
Listen, you Maya folks. No, it becomes super reflexive. So I guess also, so the way that I find the easiest to navigate Blender is like FPS control position on the keyboard. So like I always have my hands over like WASD, so my pinky is always on shift. So it's like just like Control Z becomes super reflexive, like shift middle mouse becomes super reflexive as you go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How come does F not work? Like focus.
So bear with me here. F would be great, but it's not. It's period on the numpad.
What?
But
Yeah.
not like the regular period on the.
No.
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 Does F do anything else, or can I make my keybind actually make sense?
F will fill. So if I if I got rid of a face, I could select like all the edges, and I could hit F to fill it.
You know,
Interesting.
mine doesn't go to. I'm pressing like the period on the number pad, and it's not doing anything.
Do you have an object selected?
Oh wait, that might be. Stop.
And then control middle is apparently
Okay, I got
snap
it.
to a direction, and that's going to be confusing.
Oh, really? Because control
me-
middle for me is zoom.
Yeah, control.
That's alt middle for me, and then control is snap. That's interesting.
Is this
Whoa,
the
yours
pains
are-
of learning the key binding for a new program versus what you're used to using?
Yes, every
Yeah.
single program uses
Definitely.
slightly different keybinds.
Like
Yeah, 'cause
Go ahead,
Okay.
Alyssa. Go ahead, Alyssa.
I was just gonna say I'm so like I already do PC gaming, so I have like the WASD like movement system for Unity, but then like I have Maya's like key bindings just so ingrained in my brain that like just moving around the scene is actually infuriating because I'm not
Yep.
used to it.
Well,
I
just
keep trying to move and rotating on accident and all that.
and just wait until we get into move, rotate, and scale, because it's not.
Mm.
So that's
I like
actually
that the scrolly wheel still scrolls. That's good.
yes. Scroll wheel zooms, which is great. Also, control middle mouse for me zooms, but Cordelia, you were saying that snaps you to a view, huh?
Yeah, it's alt middle mouse is the zoom for me.
See, it's
Yeah,
opposite
those
for
are-
me.
Oh, weird.
Yeah,
Alt
I'm
middle
mouse
with
for
Bryce,
Snaps.
so it's weird.
Do they have any like keybind presets that you can switch to? Like I know 3D Code does that, where they have like here's a Maya mode, here's a Blender mode.
Yes, I highly recommend not using Maya mode because you might as well learn like default Blender, just because.
If you did want to change that just for the sake of knowing it, where would the menu be to?
Oh, you just want to know out of curiosity, huh?
I really do, just in case,
Yes.
especially in case Cordelia's is like messed up since it's a little different than. I mean, I am
sure.
using version 3.4 or something.
Oh yeah, what does yours do? Control versus alt with middle.
Mine is the same as Bryce's.
Okay, so it must be
Like,
because I'm on
alt-
3.2.
And I'm on
snaps to
3.1.
the like different views, and then the control like zooms in and out.
So maybe that was the sometime after 3.2 thing.
Whoa, what is this? Oh, this
Yeah, maybe.
lasso tool. I found it on accident.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, we can go over some setup stuff, including some key binding things. Now that we kind of have general basic like navigation. So if you go to Edit and then Preferences, there's an Input section. I have Emulate Numpad selected.
Okay.
What this will do is typically the numpad numbers are what you use to snap to certain views, like left, right, top, bottom. Emulate Numpad uses the alphanumeric number, so the ones above the letters.
Does it
and I
let you
find
use both, or just like switch back and forth between them?
it switches back and forth. So I can. It looks like I can use both still. So it looks like it's just projecting and not replacing.
Okay, so you can technically use the ones above the alphanumeric ones like as well as the keypad.
Yes,
I guess I
yeah.
could see why that would be useful for a laptop where you might not have all the same buttons.
Yeah, because
Cool.
you will almost. I don't know if I've seen a keyboard that doesn't have the numbers at the top, but there are plenty of keyboards that don't have the numpad itself. So I assume that's why that's there. I usually have this on because it's more convenient for me to use my left hands to hit like 1, 3, and 5 than it is for me to take my hand off my mouse and do that. So I usually have this checked.
Do you know what it does unchecked? Like, what do those do anything that it replaces?
Yeah, so in edit mode, 1, 2, and 3 will go between vertex, edge, and face.
That sounds...
You can rebind those. I find myself switching views way more than switching sub-objects, modes, or whatever. So yeah, so I usually keep that on, but you don't have to. I don't think it's on by default, but that's just it's more of like a reach convenience thing for me. And then the other thing is in the key map section, there are two things. I have select all toggles turned on. If you don't have this, if you want to select everything, you can hit A, and then if you want to deselect, you have to double tap A. Whereas if you have select all toggles on, it's just literally A selects everything, A deselects everything. I just find that a lot easier than like a rapid double tap. So I just leave that on. And then huge, especially when learning Blender, the spacebar action should be set to search. It defaults to play because I get, like, if you're animating, you just want to be able to hit spacebar to like play your animation really quickly. So that's typically the default, but search is invaluable when you forget a hotkey. You can just hit spacebar and type, and it'll not only pull up a bunch of options, but it'll also show you the hotkeys for them. So I usually have those up. And then preferences are always like saved by default, so you don't really have to do anything other than close it. So we can do viewport snapping next, since we just set that with the emulate. So whoops. The 1, 3, 5, and 7 keys will snap you to front, right. 5 changes between orthographic and perspective, and 7 goes to the top.
Oh, wow.
Now, the reason why 5 seems to be the outlier here is because on the numpad, 5 is in the middle. And it typically has like a little like raised bit to let you know that that's the 5, so that's why it's like kind of random seeming. So it's really 1, 3, and 7 are like your nice snaps. So 1 for the front, 3 for the right, 7 for the top.
And 5 is just perspective from the look.
5 is just, yeah, toggling perspective and orthographic.
And it looks like Z is up for this program.
Z is up.
Y up.
Correct.
Okay.
If you want the inverse, so if you want back, left, and bottom, you hold Control and hit 1, 3, and 7, and it'll give you the opposites. If you're ever unsure what view you're in, if you look in the upper left here, it'll tell you. So right now I'm front orthographic. If I hit 3, I'm right orthographic. If I hit Control 3, I'm left orthographic, left perspective. And then anytime you're in a view and you middle mouse out of it, it'll just shift back to user perspective.
So crazy.
And then like 2 and 4 and 6, like snap increment, like a rotation around the respective axis.
Wait, what?
I never use these. if I ever hit 2, it's on accident. Like
2,
if I
4,
ever
and
do
6,
this,
Alyssa.
oh, whoops. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah. So 2 and Control.
Oh, I see.
2.
I didn't click it more than once.
Yeah. It's a progressive thing.
So they're basically the arrow keys around it, because 4 and 6 is left and right, and then 2 and 8 are up and down.
Yeah.
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 Cool.
9 is just fun.
What? Oh, flip, I guess, right?
Yeah, but it's like a lerp
Weird.
flip.
9
make
is
yourself
motion
sick.
sickness.
Yeah. I keep clicking all the buttons over and over again. It's very giving me. It's making my brain happy, but it's probably
Yeah.
making Mike a little dizzy.
Steve says press 9 to spin.
Yep. Spin. And then 0.
I can hear Alyssa just rapidly tapping her key.
Yeah, I
It's
know.
not like
I
it's
don't even
great.
need to look at the screen.
0 is rave mode.
0 looks through the camera. So if you have a camera in the scene and it's currently set to your like active camera object, if you hit 0, it'll put you into the camera view, like what it sees. And to get out of, like I said, to get out of any like particular snap view, it's just middle mouse and then you're good.
0 is smile for the camera.
Yeah. Now, if you find yourself offset, so like this, like I'm orbiting around like nothing at the moment, and I want to be more focused on the cube. Again, that's period on the numpad. And
Now
it'll
that makes
focus
more
up.
sense if all your navigation stuff is
Yeah.
quick map stuff is over there.
Yes.
Very true.
It's still obnoxious because it's like ZBrush. I get it has such weird. There's so many weird key combinations in ZBrush, but it's because it was built knowing that you should be using a tablet. So like the shift dragging and weird like click and release kind of things that they have are really, really intuitive once you get used to them with like a pen and a tablet. But I don't know in what world, unless I guess maybe the developer could have been left-handed, and so their right hand was on the numpad. But like numpad is one of the most inconvenient places I think to do something because I mean it's near your mouse, but I don't like taking my hand off my mouse. But anyway,
Yeah.
so
Moving around in not perspective is so disoriented.
oh yeah, if you're an orthographic, it's like ew.
It just looks wrong, like so.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So we'll do a quick tour around this viewport, just so that we can see where certain things are. So very quickly, if we go to the upper left of our top bar here, we have the viewport type. So right now it's a 3D viewport. This is where we can switch into different viewport types. So like shader editor, I can go to the shader editor. If I wanted to go to like the UVs, this is where you can swap those things out. As a quick aside, you don't have to have just one viewport window. You can have multiple, which is nice. So I will show you how to create one and how to remove it again, because a lot of times when people are first learning Blender, they accidentally make a new viewport window and don't know how to get rid of it because it's not super intuitive. So if you move your mouse cursor to the corner of the viewport, any corner will do, you can see it changes to a little crosshair. If you click and drag when that crosshair is there, it will create a split. If you move left and right, it'll create a vertical split, and if you move up and down, it'll create a horizontal split. Now each of these is its own viewport, so if we go to the upper left of any of these to select our viewport type, we can set this to the UV editor, we can set this to the shader editor, and now we have like a nice little set.
Wait, how did you do that again? I'm like, it just lets me do this.
If you move to the corner of any viewport
Oh,
and then click and drag.
I see.
Yeah.
Oh wait, I have both. I can't. It messes me up that I try to like press undo and it doesn't
Yes, I know.
affect that.
Yup.
How do
So-
you get rid of it once it's there?
To get rid of it, if you click on any dividing edge, you can manipulate the position of it. At least you should be able to. Steven and I encountered an issue just last night where it didn't, so I'm glad that yours does. Sorry, Steve, I still haven't figured out why. But if when you see the cursor change to the little left-right arrow, if you right-click, you have some options where you can split it even more, or you can join areas. So if I join areas, you can see that I can go to either side and it'll show like an arrow pointing to which direction it will combine them. So if I point this way, it'll combine those two, and then I can right click, join down, and now I'm back to normal. So again, to split, you grab a corner when you see the crosshair, click and drag. And if you want to join them back together, you hover over the border, right click, join areas, right click, join areas.
I just found a slightly quicker way also to do the join, if you want to hear it.
Ooh, a hotkey, yes.
No, not a hotkey. Select the corner again of a window, if you can see mine, and then hold, like select, so left click and hold, and then just pull it over the other window, and it joins it directly.
Oh, I see. Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
Very cool. So yeah, so
Oh, yeah.
when you click and drag, if you do it again, just into the other window, then it'll do that. Very nice. I like that.
Wait, hold on. No. Okay, hold on. I have to do this. I've made too many.
They are
Yeah.
multiplying.
No.
Alyssa, how many did you make?
Manny, I'm trying. I just want him
Well,
back here.
Practically can we get with this? That's a good question.
Magic asks, can the viewports be dragged out to a separate window, Bryce?
Oh, good question.
Yes. There's a
They can also get really tiny.
there's a hotkey. If you hold Shift when creating a new window, so if I have my little crosshair cursor here, if I hold Shift and then click and drag, it'll pop a version of that out.
Oh, it just duplicates it. I like this a lot. This is something I don't think you can do in Maya.
Yeah, because this is just now a free-floating window, so this can go anywhere.
And can you save your like layout?
Yes, so if
Creation?
I like this layout, so like I have the shader editor up and I have the UV editor up here. There's a little plus button. There's these tabs up top. You can see right now we're in layout mode, which is just kind of the default. If you click the little plus, you can duplicate current, and it'll create like my layout.
Oh.
So if I go back to regular layout and I put all these things back to the default, if I go to my layout, it goes back.
So add workspace. Cool.
And there's a bunch of existing ones here too. Like if you like, there's a modeling one that has like a bit different of a layout, animation one that has like a timeline and like camera view. I usually don't use these too much, but they're handy every once in a while for sure.
I did not realize that those were layout options, not menus. Cool.
Yes, yeah, these are just like different tabs for essentially the whole layout. Oh yeah, save your layout there, Alyssa.
I found the smallest you can make a window, by the way. Wonderful.
Show that real quick. There's Alyssa's layout. No, that's not a screen duplication
Sweet
glitch.
Jesus, Alyssa.
Own thing. I just
Terrifying.
wanted to see if I could break it. Oh, it doesn't rotate it in all of them. Oh,
You
no.
wanted to see if you could break it.
We tried to figure out if we could without asking if we should.
Yeah.
yeah, you know. Should we break it?
Uh-huh.
Jeez.
Yeah, this, by the way, is the smallest window you apparently can make. It's down in the bottom right of
Aw,
mine.
this tiny one.
You can go pretty tiny with them too. It's
Yeah,
pretty...
you can get pretty small.
I'm so amused by artists playing around with new artist software now, and just
Good
so
stuff.
amusing.
I think you can still kind of. Can I use this? No, it's too small. But then I can just get rid of that mess.
Oh, I can't... There it goes.
So we'll navigate down from here. So the next thing, instead of going across, we'll go down, because this is another thing that you might accidentally do and not know how to get it back, is if you accidentally hit like W. So now I have I don't have drag select anymore. Now I have lasso. Now I have just move.
Oh, that's what I
so
did.
this first option here is your selection method. If you click and hold this, you'll see the options here. I usually default to select box, but W toggles through all those options.
It's very Photoshop of it.
Yes. If you don't see this menu, it's because you hit T on accident. So T is for tools. This brings up your tools.
Magic, are
So
you saying
sometimes-
that's how you would break it? Sorry, I was reading a comment in the chat. Magic
Oh,
said
yeah.
do that with several open windows while trying to sculpt in here. That might do it. I think he's referring to
Yeah.
trying to break Blender.
Or
Let's not-
animating.
Let's not break it during the tutorial. Let's not do that.
Yeah. Because one of the default things for the animation to do is to play in any 3D viewport. And so if you have 15 of them open, it's trying to play the animation in all 15, which can become inefficient, to say the least. Yeah, so T for tools pops out this little menu, palette, I think you would call it. So just that's another thing that I did a lot and have seen a lot is accidentally switching a selection mode and not knowing how to get it back or what you did. So that's there. So I think we can get into some modeling now.
Whee!
And then that'll cover us through the rest of the top bar, because this has a lot more to do with individual modeling bits.
Hey, Bryce, I wrote you a note.
Did you? Oh. Okay. As you were saying, Mike, artists, am I right? Just the lasso tool.
Oh, Lord.
It feels like a sketch.
That's great.
Anyway, sorry. Gotta have fun.
Okay, so first thing I like to do is select everything by just hitting A and then deleting it. So again, select toggles, just you hit A to toggle everything or nothing. And then to delete things, you just hit X. So X will always ask you what you want to delete. Sometimes it'll have more options, like if you selected in edit mode, if you selected some sub-objects, it'll ask you if you want to delete the vertices or the edges or the faces. But since we're just in object mode right now, it just deletes whatever we have selected. So I just hit A, you see everything's highlighted, I hit X, and I click to delete. So we have a clean slate.
That's apparently the safe delete button, because the delete button just gets rid of it. No question.
Yes, I like X because it has
Delete.
options,
Yeah.
whereas like delete
Cool.
is just like, yeah, get rid of it. Plus X is where my left hand is.
Mm. Yeah, it's a good spot.
Now, this isn't so much of a problem anymore. Blender used to be right click to select things, and left click would just move this 3D cursor around. It would just show up wherever you left clicked. It was one of the most obnoxious things ever, and why people hate Blender, I would imagine, is because you'd be like, cool, I want to click this, and you'd go to click it, and your 3D cursor would pop, and it wouldn't select anything, and then you'd right click, and it would select, and it'd be like, oh, this is the worst thing ever. So now it's much harder to move this 3D cursor, but if you do on accident, it's shift right click to move this. This is essentially like where things will spawn in, among many other things. So if you accidentally move this, it can be really frustrating because Control Z doesn't just put it back. And now if I were to create an object, it would spawn there instead of world center, which is annoying. So that's another thing that can accidentally happen. In order to fix this, we want to use the other side of the Windows tool palette, which is N for options. I'm not sure exactly why it's N. I'm sure there's a reason. But if you hit N, and we come down to the View tab, you can see we have a 3D cursor section that shows the location and rotation. So I just like to zero this out, and it all goes back to normal.
How do you do wait,
So N
mhm,
as in Nancy.
and view.
I was gonna make an Archer joke, but it actually works.
Who says
Nancy.
Nancy?
Nancy.
Yeah.
As for Nancy.
Man.
And
And then
what
there's
was this?
so It'll default to your tool. You just go to View, the View tab, and then the 3D cursor section. You just zero out the location and rotation. So again, it's not something that happens as often anymore, but it still can, and it's really annoying if you don't know where to fix that. So that's just where that is. And I'm just gonna leave the N window up just because. So now that our 3D cursor is where it's supposed to be, we can create objects. So if we want to do it through menus, it's just this add menu up here. You can also hit Shift A, either one.
And it's just, which menu is it without Shift A?
Add.
I see.
So this is all the things you can add. So lights and cameras and meatballs. It's actually meta ball, but it looks like meatball every time I glance past it. Typically what we want though is mesh. So we'll just put our cube back, I suppose. I mean, you can pick whatever you want, but we'll just start with a cube. And there you go, it spawns a cube. Nice and easy. If you have something that's a little more complex, like a cylinder, let's say, you will get this little additional options box that'll pop up at the bottom left of your viewport that you can use to adjust certain parameters.
Very nice.
So like if I want the radius of this to be bigger, if I want it to not be as dense, I can make... Look at that, I made a cube out of a cylinder. Brilliant. The cap fill type is big, so having it fill with nothing or do a triangle fan is nice.
How do you switch to wireframe view?
So, if you hit Z on your keyboard,
Okay.
it'll pull up the 4 shading modes. Solid, material preview, which is like fake rendering, just using some basic setup. Full rendered, which renders with scene lights and scene world, and then wireframe.
Cool.
So yeah, if I select triangle fan now, hey, look at that. You can see that it's triangle fanned. I usually leave it on N-gon and then delete the face and then extrude inward because I hate triangles, but that's neither here nor there. So, I have a cube. Now, whatever shape you have, whatever object you have, when you want to start editing it, you can either come up to the next drop down over and switch to edit mode, or you can just hit tab. I almost always hit tab because oftentimes I'm bouncing in and out of edit mode and object mode quite frequently. So just tab, bounces you in and out. Now you can see our viewport changes a little bit when we go into edit mode. We get some additional tools on the side. We get, well, I get some additional stuff over here because it's like plugins and stuff. And then we also get some symmetry options and some subtool options. Most of that stuff's pretty self-explanatory, like as you're going through. And I mostly use hotkeys for all this stuff anyway. But we'll look at some of the important bits. So when we're in edit mode, there's obviously your 3 typical sub-object modes. So vertex mode, edge mode, and face mode are all here. So whenever you need to switch, you can. Typically, if we don't have emulate numpad, control 1, 2, and 3 usually switch between these, or it might just be 1, 2, and 3 or control. I forget. But since we have emulate numpad, they don't, so I just click these. But like I said, I don't click them that often that it matters. So, when it comes to manipulating these objects, we have the standard 3 manipulation methods, which is move, rotate, and scale. Now, I like to call it grab in Blender because it's the G key that is the hotkey for moving. So if we select some verts by drag selecting or select a face or whatever. If we hit G, it will now grab those. And it'll make the cube dance. This is one of the things I love the most about Blender.
Chris says
Is
the
the way
power
that
of
it-
cubes.
Yeah, well, yeah, the power of cubes. Yeah. So, what's really, really great about this is by hitting the G key, it's manipulating the position of these verts based on where my camera is positioned. So it's moving left and right, up and down based on my camera, not 3D space. If you want to snap to a specific direction, you just have to hit the letter corresponding to that axis. So if I wanted to move all these in the x-axis, I would just hit X now, and it's snapping to the x-axis of the world, which is just great. If you hit X a second time, it'll snap to the local x-axis, which in this case is the same. So I'm going to rotate this so we can see the difference. So again, I'm hitting G to move these verts. I'm hitting X. This will snap it to the world axis or global axis. If I hit X again, it's now snapping to the local. So if I want to go global Y, there's global Y. If I want to go local Y, there's local Y. If I want to go global Z, well, Z is the same for both in my case. You can see this in the upper left corner here. There's a bunch of tools, like where it says edit mode. As soon as you start to manipulate an object, so if I hit G, you can see everything changes. Not only does it show it how much I've moved the object, but if I hit X, it'll show it's saying that I've moved this 0.202 along global X. Or if I hit X again, it'll say along local X.
I see, and if you move it like in the Y direction and then want to move it in the X direction after that, if you like let go and reselect it, it'll. And I can't like verbalize what I'm trying to say, but like visually doing it.
Yes, yeah, for sure. And what's really nice about using G to move is you can not commit the move by right-clicking. So if I moved this along the x-axis and I was like, I actually don't want to do this, I can just right-click and it doesn't commit the move. If I hit G, move it along the X, and then left-click, it will commit, and now it stays there. And then, like you were saying, Alyssa, then I can hit G again, and this time hit Y, and then move it along the Y, and then click.
Bryce, I don't know if you got Steve's comment.
Oh, I did not. I had Discord on the other screen.
This equals to key press is one of my favorite
Oh,
things.
yes.
So useful.
Yes.
Nice.
You can also, while you're moving, so if I hit G and then hit X to move along the global X axis, if I knew that I wanted to move this a specific amount, I can just type a number. So let's say 1. And now you can see this has moved 1 unit along the global X. If I hit 5, it is now 15 because this is like an active text box. So I can actually hit backspace to backspace back to 0 and then type a different one. So if I wanted 5 instead, I could just backspace and type 5. You can hit backspace as much as you want to clear the whole thing and then type a number.
Does it show you what you're typing, or does it just remember what you're typing?
Yeah, in the upper left.
Upper.
So right now, see, mine says
Oh,
D
okay, I see.
0.5, which equals 50 centimeters, which equals 0.5 meters along global X. So I can hit X again to make this 0.5 along local X, and then I can hit backspace, backspace, 5 to make it full 5 units, backspace, 2. So that's really nice because you can move it in a very specific amount or increment.
Yeah. And can I do? Oh wow. Okay.
So another handy tool, let's say that I wanted to move this in, this is less for movement and usually more for like scaling, but let's say I wanted to move this in the X and the Y axis, but not the Z. Like let's say that this is the perfect height, but I want to move it in 2 directions. If I hit G, to go into movement mode, instead of hitting X to just snap to the X or Y to just snap to the Y, I can hit Shift Z, and that will mean snap to everything but Z.
Huh.
So now I'm moving in the X and the Y, but not the Z. Like I said, this is really nice.
You don't
for
have to hold
scaling.
it, you just have to click it.
Correct.
Neat.
So like if I selected everything and I wanted this to be much wider, but not tall at all, like don't scale up, I can hit S to scale, and I can hit Shift Z to not scale in the Z. And then again, I can type a number. If I wanted to scale this up by 2, I can just type 2 and then left click or enter.
That's pretty cool.
So movement, rotation, and scale all use the same conventions. So if I wanted to scale this in just the X global or X local, if I wanted to scale the entire thing by 0.5, if I wanted to rotate on the local X by 45 degrees, that would be R for rotate, X, X for local, and then just 45 on the numpad and enter or left click to commit.
Steve says, I figured out my window border resizing issue. It was in preferences of
Oh.
key map, screen editing, move area edges.
Oh, interesting. Edit. Preferences. Key map. Screen. Screen editing. Oh my. So move area edges was like set to not left mouse or something, huh? It's good to know.
Good to know that you can change your hotkeys too in there.
Oh gosh, everything can be changed. It's so
Yeah.
nice.
Very much like that. I feel like Blender is going to be like how ZBrush was, where once like the alien interface of it is more palatable, like I'll be able to really utilize it better than maybe Maya for certain things.
My biggest hurdle with Blender was the hotkeys. It was the fact that they're like, especially, I don't know, like now it's easier, but like when I first started learning it, like certain things just didn't exist in a menu. It was only in a hotkey.
How long did it take you to adjust to that?
It took, I think I tried to learn Blender off and on for about a year,
Mhm.
and then I would get super frustrated and be like, I already know how to do this in 3ds Max. I'm just going back. It was the same thing with ZBrush. ZBrush off and on. I was like, why would I do this? Like, this is so backwards. This is the
Right.
worst thing ever. And then at some point, it just clicked, and I was like, oh.
Steve said, yeah, move area edges just didn't exist. I had to hit a
Oh,
button to
okay.
save
Oh,
restore and it
yeah.
brought the option back.
So yeah, it got cleared out or something. Interesting.
He
But yeah,
broke it.
so just the it's very difficult for me to go back to more traditional modeling software like Maya, just for the fact like in Maya, if I wanted to move this vertex, in a very specific way, I would have to select the vertex, and then I would have my manipulation tool, and then I would have to switch modes for that manipulation tool if I wanted it to be like local or along a normal or along global, and then I would have to actually click the gizmo handle and move the handle, and that actually hurts my hand a lot. So I found that I can model for much longer in Blender because I'm not using so many very like specific click drags. It's just one, and then the manipulation part isn't so specific. Like I don't have to be so precise with my mouse as often in Blender. So that's move, rotate, and scale. So G and R and S, because that's what those letters or words start with. It's grab starts with G, and rotate starts with R, and scale starts with S. I get the WER, like that makes sense because that's like where your hand is positioned. But once you kind of learn it, like word for word, it makes more sense. Like grab, rotate, scale.
Bryce, is this what you usually use for modeling now, or do you go back and forth?
1,000%.
Okay.
Another thing that is important to know, and this is kind of a nuance of general modeling. I'm going to delete this cube, and I'm going to make a new cube. So object manipulation versus sub-object or edit mode manipulation. So right now, if I went into edit mode and I grabbed this whole object and I scaled it in the Z and flattened it out, and then I rotated it in the X 30 degrees. If I wanted to reset this back to its original state, I can't, because I've manipulated the sub-object. I've manipulated the vertices, they just exist where they are now. As opposed to, if I have a cube and I edit this in object mode and scale it in the Z and rotate it in the X 45, because it's a whole object, Blender remembers its original position. So I can hit Alt R to reset its rotation. You can see it's clear rotation, and Alt S to clear its scale, and Alt G if I had moved it to clear its location. So sometimes it's nice to manipulate general rotation and scale of the whole object in object mode instead of edit mode, because you have the option to kind of undo it. Now, there's a caveat to this. If you have a modifier, like a mirror modifier on here, and you're editing in object mode, that doesn't affect the mirror. You need to be in edit mode to affect that. So that's like a nuance, object and edit mode, just to pay attention to. If something ever seems like it's kind of strange or behaving in a way you didn't expect, that's a potential culprit. Is, did you do that thing in object mode or in edit mode? So that's just something to be aware of in general. So moving across the top here, we're going to skip. So we have our sub-object modes. If we look in the center, this is pretty handy, starting with global. So this is our default transform orientation. So if I rotate this so that I have like a global local. So we can see if I hit G and I hit X, it's global. And then X again is local. That's because my default mode is global. So when you select a specific axis, it'll always default to whatever you have set here first. So if I find myself constantly hitting X and then X again to go to local, because that's what I mostly use, I can just switch this to local. And now if I hit G and X, it defaults to local first. Then the second X switches to global.
That's pretty cool. It's just got like the presets like right there, or like with the, I guess, defaults.
Yes, yeah, I like that it uses whatever your default is. It's not like a hard bound to global. So I almost always use local, so I usually set that to default here. The next one is the pivot method, I guess you could call it. So if I had two of these objects here, the default is median point. So if I select both of these objects, which you can do, actually, so I'll go through what I just did here so that we can do this together. So if I want to copy this object, Shift D is duplicate. Now, you'll notice when you hit Shift D, if you don't click, I am now just in movement mode. So I can do the same things I did as if I had hit the G key. So I hit Shift D, I created a duplicate. I can also then just hit X and it'll snap along the global axis. And then I can left click to commit, and now I've created something that's a perfect X axis duplicate.
Oh boy.
So again, that's just Shift D and then Z, Y, Shift Z, Shift X, whatever you might want. A word of caution. What I explained before, when you select something and you hit the G key or the R key to rotate, if you don't want to commit, you right click and it undoes it.
Mm-hmm.
A Shift D is a duplicate. It has now been duplicated. If I want to move it in the X and then decide I don't want to commit that movement and right click, all that's canceling is the movement. but there is still a cube here.
Ah.
So I've
Okay.
seen that happen a lot where people will Shift D, move it, decide not to do it, and then right click, and they'll think that it undid the duplicate action, but it just
Ah.
undid the movement of the duplicate.
I see.
And because undoing that movement puts it perfectly back where the original was, you oftentimes don't notice until you start to do something, and then you're like, what's going on? Why are there two cubes? And it's like, oh, right, because of the duplicate thing.
Right, but it does keep it selected, so when you press G again, you can still move it, which is nice.
Yes. Now you can also just copy paste. So like I can select something in Control C, Control V, and it'll just paste it, and then I can hit G to like move it. That's extra hotkeys. So I usually use Shift D, X, and the left click, and then I'm good. It's just faster that way, but either way.
Gotcha. Is there any way to move around while in this G like hotkey menu? Like, is there any way to like rotate around this object before I like solidify the movement that I've done?
Not that I know of.
Okay. Okay.
In fact, if you click the middle mouse, you'll see this will actually allow you to snap to whatever axis your mouse is closest to, which is also kind of fun.
Let's see. Oh wait, no, I didn't want to do that. I want to do duplicate C9. Ah, yeah, okay, I see what that does. And if I typed in a number, it'll move it that, and it'll just change the axis that it's moving on. That's kind of neat.
Yeah.
How do I make it go? Oh, I see. Since I typed a positive number, it can only move in the positive direction. Okay,
Yeah,
this is starting
you
to
can
make
make it
some sense.
negative. So if I hit G here and I hit X and then I hit 5 and then I'm like, oh, that's the wrong way, I can just hit negative. It'll
Oh.
automatic. You don't have to backspace. Negative is just like a toggle.
That's kind of neat. Okay,
Yeah.
that and ooh, making a little spine or something here. I don't
Yeah.
know what this is.
So like if I did
Um,
G, X, and then I see that this is like 3, let's say, then I could select this again, Shift D, X, -3, and now I have my little individual cubes. And you can also see that in our little menu down here in the bottom left. You can see that I moved it -3. So if you wanted to adjust this after the fact, you can.
Gotcha.
So,
Can you do this with multiple objects?
oh yeah, so like if I have all 3 of these, I can Shift D and then Z and then go down 3. Oops. And then there we go. They're there.
I see, but then I have to do 9 times 3.
So, yep, and you can drag select or shift select will select multiple. Now, this is another kind of Blender nuance when selecting multiple objects. So if let's say I click on this cube and I want to select the other 2 cubes, you just hold shift. So if I hold shift and click, it'll select the next one, and hold shift and click, it'll select the next one. If I want to deselect the first cube, if I just shift click it, it becomes the active object. It is not deselected. The only way to, well, one of the ways to deselect an object is to make it the active object and then shift click it to deselect. So I can change which of these is the active object by holding shift and clicking them, but it's not actually deselecting anything until I click it a second time.
Right, and I could see why that would be useful to be able
Yes,
to...
and we'll see that right now actually. So right now I have shift selected or drag selected, whatever, all my objects, and because my current transform pivot point selection is set to this median point, if I were to rotate, let's say, R key in the global Y, so Y, you can see that it's rotating around the center because that's where the median point is. If I were to switch this to individual origins, so one above, and I hit R and Y, you can see now they're all rotating on their individual global Ys. And now this is where active element, in one of many examples, is useful to set, because if I pick active element from my transform pivot and then rotate along the Y, you can see it's rotating along my active object. And the active one is the lighter orange. So if I wanted to rotate around this left cube instead, I could hold Shift and left click to switch that one to my active object, and then my rotation is now going around that one. Same thing with
How did you
scaling.
get them all to rotate individually?
So in this dropdown, individual origins.
Oh, okay.
So that's nice when you like want to scale. If you want to scale things like independently, that's really nice, because then you can do individual and they'll each scale up.
Mhm.
Or you switch to median point and it'll scale from the center of the selection. Or I switch to active, which is my lighter color, and now it's scaling based on that one.
When I clip this, I am putting a slide whistle sound as it zooms in and out.
Please
I'm
do.
just letting you know.
Please do.
We're coming coming up on an hour, just so you know.
Oh shoot, we are. Wow, that was fast.
Time flies.
And these, actually, you can do this. Unity does this as well, but I don't think it's as clearly communicated. I think if you're in local and pivot mode, then you can scale objects individually, the same as this. But if you're in like global, then it'll scale like that. So Unity also kind of has a similar thing to it. Okay, then I guess, so to cover the last couple things up here, and then that kind of gets right into modeling. These are great. So this is snapping. So you have a whole snap menu here. You can toggle it on and off, and then it will snap individual components. It'll snap objects. It'll just snap anything. Right now it's set to increment, but you can set it to snap to a whole bunch of different stuff. So if I'm in edit mode, I can grab this vertex and I can set the snapping mode to vertex. And now, oh, do I need two objects? Hang on. Yeah, sorry. That's an object snap. So you can see as I move one object over another, it's snapping to each vertex as I move it. Snap to edges. You can see it's now dragging along the edge, which is nice. Face just snaps to a specific face, and volume just snaps to the actual object itself. I don't use the snapping very often. I think the only time I really use snapping is for like retopology or something like that. But even then, there's better tools for that within Blender.
Mhm.
But there is one cool thing that's similar to snapping, kind of like edge snapping, but it's sliding. So if I wanted to move this vertex, let's say this was rotated slightly, and I wanted to move this vertex like along, like its local Z. But let's say, you know, there's more complex geometry here or something, and that's difficult to do. What you can do is you can hit, well, in fact, let me make one. Okay, so I want to move this vertex along this edge, but it's not in any particular like axis direction. If I hit G and then G a second time, it will allow me to slide this vertex along an edge. Let me make another one so it's easier to see. So if I want to slide this vertex up this edge, I can hit G, normal grab, G again is now sliding, so I can slide this wherever I need it to go. which is very handy.
Yeah. I can go like that, or like that.
There's a cool little retopology combo in the right side here, this like upper right section. There's this auto merge vertices button that you can select. So if you select that, let's say I had just a bunch of verts. Now when I slide, if I get close to this corner, I can essentially just slide it into the corner, click, and it'll automatically combine the vertices together,
Oh, that is cool.
which is nice. So like if I had just a bunch of these and I wanted to combine them all together, it's just G click, GG click, GG click, GG click, GG click, GG click. And now I've combined them all into one. Now there's obviously faster ways to do that, like you can select those and like merge collapse and things like that, but that's more manipulation stuff. So I mean that it's 4 o'clock, so it's up to y'all.
How much more of the UI did you still have to go through?
There are a couple quick little hotkeys
Go for it.
and little settings for like actually creating like manipulating geometry, like modeling stuff that we could cover really quickly.
Yeah, go for it. And then next week we'll get into actual modeling.
Modeling and materials and yeah, all that kind of good stuff.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
I feel just like I'm in school again.
Yay.
But like in
So-
a good way.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, art school was fun. I don't know.
So there are typically 3, I guess you could say, like 3 major methods of like modeling. And you all might have different preferences with that, so let me know if there's like a more important thing that you find. My big 3 are edge loops, extrusions, and cutting, essentially. Those are the big ones. So if I'm in face mode and I have a face selected, or if I'm in vertex mode and I have 4 verts selected, extrusion is just the E key. So you just tap E and it'll extrude, typically along its normal. And again, this is now just a grab. So if you hit Z, it'll go Z. If you hit X, it'll go X. Y will go Y. Again, if you right click, you are only canceling the movement, not the extrusion. This is horrifying because I've seen people select a face, extrude, no, I don't want to do that. Let me try again. Extrude, oh, I don't want to do that. And now you have like 1,000 vertices all just under here, and there's Z fighting, and it's horrible. So, E, the extrusion has happened. Now it's just manipulating it. If you want to inset, this is where a right click comes in real handy. So let's say I want to extrude. So I extrude up. Then I can like scale it in. This is essentially a bevel. Now let's say I wanted to inset this face. All you have to do is extrude like normal, and then right click so that it doesn't move anywhere. And then you can scale in, and that's essentially an inset.
Oh.
So when I first started, one of the like things I did for practice was I would grab a cube, I would grab the top face, and then I would extrude up, I would click, I would scale in, bevel, extrude. Again, right click to cancel the move so it's perfectly in position, scale it in, extrude down, click, extrude back up, scale in. So like I'm creating like just, it's all just using extrude, but in different combinations of movements and scales.
Is there a way to like move the face along the surface without like after you've scaled it, just to like reposition? Like I have this little triangle, it's a little off. Like how would you? Yeah.
So if you're in face mode and you have a face selected, if you double G, it's actually just moving like the whole face along, so it's more like a scale again. So I don't know if there's a good way to slide a face. What I would do maybe is go to like a view that is like the closest like straight on view to manipulate it. But I don't know if there's a good slide face. There's actually an interesting technique for rotated geometry manipulation, but that gets a little complex.
Yeah, because I'm thinking like this is a situation where basically I would change the pivot point of something to that face and move it that
Yeah.
way.
So here, let me rotate it kind of strangely. So may be able to switch the transform orientation to normal. That seems to have done it for me.
Oh. Wait, hold on. Maybe it's hard to tell.
That looks
It looks
yeah, that
like
looks right.
It just the shadows looked a little funky at first. But,
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like it worked.
So yeah, so if you ever have a weird rotated face and you want to move an inset face along that, then normal for the transform orientation is probably the way to go. And then if you want to see the gizmo, like to actually move and rotate stuff more traditionally, it's just clicking on the move rotate scale. I usually leave this one selected, the transform, because it's all three. But when you have all three, you don't get the little corner manipulators. So
Right.
sometimes you might want those over the actual transform.
Yeah, I guess I could see where that would. So you can't like select both or something. Oh no.
Mm-hmm.
Can't. So you still can't like set a new pivot point for it. Basically, which isn't bad. I mean, I can work with this. This is like a
You can kind of. So
I don't know if that's tricky or not.
it is. So the 3D cursor is where you can start to manipulate that. So we could, like, I think I could select this face and then set 3D cursor. Yeah. See, that gets weird. So we could manipulate the 3D cursor so that it is at the place you want the pivot, and then we can set this pivot to the 3D cursor, and then you can see now it's rotating around the 3D cursor.
Okay.
You just have to manipulate the 3D cursor in a way that accommodates that, which can be a little bit weird to do.
Right, because it's not like as simple as just clicking like align to this face or this whatever.
Yeah, if we were in object mode, we could. There's the origin, like we can set the origin of this to a lot of different things, which essentially manipulates its pivot, but the pivot of individual sub-objects gets a little strange.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know.
I'm gonna put these back to...
I've made this monstrosity so far, so I mean,
Yeah.
doing something.
Oh yeah, so the other thing is loop cuts. That's the other big thing. So I'm gonna undo till this is back straight up and down. So to create a loop, you just hit Control R, and it will enact the loop cut tool. You can see I can move it around to a bunch of different faces, and it'll give me like a preview of where it's gonna cut. Once you decide that this is where you want it to cut, you just left click to commit the cut, and then it'll give you, it'll put you into slide mode automatically, so you can slide this up and down. If you don't want to manipulate the position of this, you can just right click and it'll snap back to the center. If you hit Control R and you want more than one loop cut, you can scroll your mouse wheel, and it'll just give you multiple cuts.
That's pretty cool.
I like it a lot. And then you can do whatever you want with it. Two more kind of important things to know. One is a fun thing and one is a be very careful thing. So right now, if I wanted to select this middle group of verts so that I could scale them out, if I drag select, we're going to have a problem, and I won't know it until it's too late. So if I drag select these and scale them up, cool. That's what I wanted to do. But then I realized, uh-oh, it didn't grab the vertex in the back. So, super easy. If we come up to the toolbar at the top on the far right, you can see there's these two little squares overlapping. This is toggle X-ray. This will now make it so that you can select anything behind it. Behind like geometry that's including it. But this is also kind of a weird half wireframe, half solid view. So what I usually do when I turn X-ray mode on is I click the drop down for my render modes. So these four circles up here correspond to the four things when you hit the Z menu. So remember before how we switched to wireframe by hitting Z. So solid, material, wireframe, and rendered, that's up here. So this is wireframe, solid, material, and rendered. So if you ever want to just click between them, you can. But the little drop down here has settings for the mode that you're in. So we're in solid mode. X-ray is a little bit too transparent for me. So if we click the drop down, you can see we have this X-ray that's checked now. And I can just crank this all the way back up to 1. And now I'm not really seeing through it until I'm in edit mode. And even when I'm in edit mode, it's a lot more occluded. So this is a fun one. If I wanted to scale this up, but I wanted to have a bit of soft selection, it's this last little button at the top here. So if I turn this on, I have a bunch of options for different like fall offs and things like that. But if I toggle this on and I do something like scale, you can see I now have a big circle around my selection. While you're manipulating, either rotate, scale, or grab, if you scroll the mouse wheel up and down, it'll change the influence of your soft selection.
How do you turn the soft selection on again?
It's the last little toggle in like your center.
Oh, you
so
can
I
change
just
your shape. Okay.
Yeah, and you can change it.
And then you have to have. Oh, I see. Like while you're in like the scaling option.
Mm-hmm.
Real quick, I want to say hi to Shavak, first time chatter. We are about to wrap up this week. This was the first of a 3-part series. Next week we're going to get into modeling. This week was about just learning to navigate the UI and keybinds and things of that nature. Because if you're used to another program, there's a learning curve because you're used to hitting this key to do this action, and learning how to use that in Blender can be different. And that's why we had Corday and Alyssa here to provide that perspective, because they both use different programs.
Yes.
Always good to learn things. Oh Lord, this is such a weird. I mean, I like Blender so far. I gotta admit, I just think there's just certain things where I'm like, ooh, what's this gonna do? And then it doesn't do exactly like this. Is
How long have you used Maya, Alyssa?
Well, I've used Maya for like 5 years, maybe 6. But I started on 3ds Max before that, when I had like 2 years of experience with 3ds Max.
Gotcha. Sorry, that was for what Bryce was doing on screen while you were talking about what you were saying.
I looked over right when you said that, and I was like, ooh, yeah, you're agreed.
So yeah, there's a lot of muscle memory that learning a new program you have to unlearn. I'm going through that with the Premiere Pro right now. I want to punch my monitor every time I open a new project.
Yep.
It is.
Oh, God.
Once you get used to it, it's so nice, but getting to that point is definitely it takes some effort for sure.
I'm still like that with 3D code. I bought it and was like, okay, I'll use it
Yeah.
to do
Magic-
some cool stuff. But the interface of it, like I don't know where to begin on
Mhm.
certain things, and
Right,
certain
yeah.
tutorials start like 3 steps ahead of where you need to be. So
Yep.
it's like, ugh, but I'll get there. It's just the
Magic asks, how do you
frustration
resize the soft select circle?
Oh,
And Steve-
scroll wheel.
Yeah, Steve just said scroll wheel in chat.
Yeah.
Thanks, Steve.
So you can do that
Help
while
each
you're
other.
manipulating, which is nice.
Nice.
So I'll leave us with 2 more fun hotkeys that are very important.
Okay.
Instead of drag selecting this whole loop, because sometimes you can't, sometimes it's a complex loop, all you have to do is hold Alt and left click, and it'll select an edge loop,
Nice.
which is very nice. So just Alt left click.
Oh, sweet. It works in vertex mode too. That's awesome.
Yeah. So like, what I often do is Alt select and then like Control B to bevel, and it creates a nice little quick bevel. If you want to select multiple edge loops, you can hold Shift and then Alt click, and it'll select that set as well. And then the last one is the Control plus numpad plus. So let's say that I had this edge loop selected, Alt click, I select my edge loop, but I want to grow my selection. If I hit Control and then numpad plus, it will grow my selection. And if I hit numpad minus, it'll shrink my selection. So I often use that in combination with soft select, where I'll select one loop and I'll scale it, and I'll be like, okay, that's kind of weird. It's not really scaling how I want to. So I'll right click to cancel, Control plus to select the next set, then scale, and be like, okay, cool, that's a little bit more what I wanted.
Control plus. Okay.
Yes, Control plus and Control minus.
Is arguably better than the whatever the heck it is in it's like the right and left carrots or whatever those are called, like the greater.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
It's very similar though. You still have to hold. Alright, hold on. Super. Writing this down.
Yeah, I think those are kind of the basics. Again, there's a lot of pitfalls, but there's also just kind of a lot of memorization. So again, G to move or grab, R to rotate, S to scale. When you're in one of those manipulation modes, X, Y, and Z to snap to the respective axis, X a second time, or Z a second time, or Y a second time to move between global and local. Tab to go into edit mode. Alt click to select an edge loop. E to extrude. I'm in face mode. E to extrude. Control R plus scroll wheel if you want to create edge loops. And yeah, that's kind of like the basics of modeling, I guess, or like the basic tools that you might need for modeling. You'll notice too, there's a whole toolbar on the right side when you're in edit mode of a whole bunch of other stuff. So if you ever want like just a button to click, like a loop cut or an inset or something, there are those tools there as well. But the hotkeys are just so convenient. It's like, yeah, I just use those. But it's fun to play around with them. So I think that's pretty good for today.
Okay.
Next week we'll dive further into modeling, so like cutting and deleting edges and dissolving faces, and we can also look at some of the modifiers and some of the general rendering stuff, so that we can add some color and material properties, some basic ones.
And by
just
week
to
3, we will
differentiate.
build a full game.
Yeah, week 3, it's how it goes. You
Yeah.
finish the owl.
Yeah. The rest of the owl.
Yep.
Good thing we've made our circles and lines first.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll model some little fun stuff in here to practice. See if I get any questions to ask.
Cordelia and
I highly
Alyssa, any
suggest.
other UI UX questions before we? I guess.
Yeah, or anybody in chat.
Not at the moment.
Yeah, I think that covers everything that I would be thinking of. That's why I want to like model some stuff and just see if
Yes.
I hit any walls. with
Yes, I
things.
definitely suggest like think of something that you have modeled before in Maya, and or something that would be very easy for you to model in Maya, and
Mask.
try to model it in Blender. And
What do you want us to make?
It says shark mask.
Ooh.
Just because I remember
Oh.
that stream from months and months and months ago.
I think
Oh,
we
yeah.
said stapler earlier, but that was just kind of an object.
You know me, I just want to model some little animals and plants.
I'll
Yeah.
make it.
Probably
I'll make it. Try dragon whelp.
There you go.
Yes. I'm just gonna have the most complex models done for you.
But yeah, that's what I found was the best way to learn Blender, was to try to model something, and then if I couldn't figure out a specific hotkey or tool or something like that, or what it was called in Blender, then like a quick Google search using Maya terms usually pops something up, or just asking, like you can ask me at any time if it's just like, hey, like I feel like there's a better way to do this, then I could be like, oh sure there is, or no there's not,
Hey,
you're doing it
Bryce,
right.
If
how do
you
I
would like to
open
ask-
Blender?
Sorry, go ahead, what's it?
I was just like, how do I open Blender?
Yeah, start
So-
over.
Since Bryce opened that Pandora's box, if you like to reach Bryce, you can find him on Twitter at bevans104.